So there were a lot of things happen actually. Basically, people remember the Pope has died, and a funeral happened. I think it was yesterday. And so you had leaders from around the world. You had, of course, Trump there. You had Zelensky. There was a talk between Trump and Zelensky. There was a talk between Trump and Netanyahu. And we have a lot of information. And one thing we'll go to one clip that we have ready, although the sound is a bit off, is basically when Trump was asked, I think for the first time, about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. First time he commented on the humanitarian access when it comes to Gaza. Of course, Israel has limited humanitarian aid from going into Gaza for I think more than a month right now, and now, well, we can immediately go to the thing since we're going to be commenting on it. So might as well play it. As I said, the sound is not the best, but I'll mention the most important parts. It's only 40 seconds or so, so let's listen.
And that's good.
Access to food, medicine coming into Gaza. When you spoke to Mr. Netanyahu the other day, did that come up at all about access to humanitarian aid going into Israel?
No, Gaza came up, and I said, we've got to be good to Gaza. Those people are suffering. We've got to be good to Gaza. We're going to take care of them. There's a very big need for medicine, food and medicine, and we're taking care of it.
In terms of like opening up more access points,
Pushing people very hard.
pushing the Israelis
We are
to open up more access
very hard to get food and medicine into Gaza.
How did the Prime Minister respond to that?
Well,
So, if it wasn't really audible, he was asked about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. He said, "It's bad. We have to be nice to them. Those people are suffering. We have to help them. We need to allow more food and medicine to go into Gaza." At the end, he was also asked, "Is he pushing Israelis to basically allow this?" And he said, "Yes." And they are responding sort of kindly to that, or they're sort of responding positively to that. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Joining me today is James Valiant, and I mean, going to you, James. It really does seem that Trump is well. This is what he said. He wants aid to go into Gaza. He wants to push Israelis into doing so. What do we do about that?
That is not treating this like a war, is it? It is not at all. It is also the naive assumption that the people of Gaza are different than Hamas. I mean, in the same breath, he says, of course, not Hamas. Well, in the sound, he's giving these informal, impromptu press conferences aboard Air Force One, a jet plane. And so he's got the sound problems that you'd have in trying to record in an airplane. But to be good to the Gazans, now, I have one of the heartening things in recent weeks is that you've seen some Gazans complaining about Hamas, and gosh, if unfortunately we cannot pick and choose through them and to give only aid to them. In fact, if you give aid to those people, the aid will get straight to Hamas. So you can say on the one hand we don't want aid to get to Hamas, but any aid that goes in, I'll repeat this, any aid that goes into Gaza will necessarily help Hamas and the Palestinian cause. And the correct, and look, they've still got weeks worth. I understand they've still got weeks worth of food and medicine there. It's not like there are people actually starving or diseases out. There's outbreak of diseases going on in Gaza right now at all. But the only way, and by the way, there are about 24 hostages that are still alive. They're already being starved. I've seen the condition of some of these people coming out. They're being starved, beaten, God knows what else. So it's not as though, and if you want to get the hostages out, the only way you can do is put the maximum pressure on the whole of Gaza, so that these people know that the war is counterproductive, and the only way you're going to eat is if you unilaterally surrender and give up all the hostages. So the idea of being good to Gaza is an extremely naive I mean, notion Trump is completely out of bounds here. Being good to the Gazans. No, we don't have to be good to people that helped perpetrate, that first of all put Hamas in power, that allowed them to lob rockets at Israel for the last almost 20 years, and pulled off October 7th. No, it's absolutely the wrong procedure, the wrong way to go about doing a war. You cut off all aid. Can you imagine someone saying this in any other wartime context? Well, we've got to feed the enemy population. Even if some of the enemy population might be opposed to their leadership, it does not alter the fact that their leadership is still trying to organize and still trying to kill Israelis, still active. And Hamas has not been utterly crushed and defeated. Until that happens, the idea of sending food in is obscene. Obscene. It perpetuates war. It perpetuates Hamas. It perpetuates the whole Palestinian cause. So, as we've said repeatedly here, the reason why this war is dragged on as long as it has, and the reason why the cause of the Palestinians will drag on in perpetual war, is because we don't treat this like a real war. We don't defeat them and crush them and drive them into complete submission and unconditional surrender. That and that alone has any chance of bringing lasting peace. And so long as Israel even considers this, now, good for Israel that the military forces are saying, no, there can't be aid going in there. But you got political forces in Israel saying, no, we've got to send aid into Gaza. So long as Israel and America continues down this sort of war and not war, A and not A at the same time policy with respect to warfare. I mean, when you engage in warfare, it's full on or it's nothing. Otherwise, you're just going to continue the killing, continue the Palestinian cause, and we're not going to make any real progress. That's my view.
Yeah, just when it comes to sort of the political echelon versus the military echelon, it's sort of the other way around, which we can go into in a bit. But basically, yeah, the food is slowly running out. I mean, even when sort of Israel stopped it, they knew there's a few months worth of sort of let's say food, and I think a bit lower amount when it came to fuel, which I think is much more important when it comes to running sort of Gaza. You cannot run the tunnels, you cannot run the ventilator systems without any fuel.
Their power should be shut off completely. The lights should be shut off. They should have no fuel, no way of generating electricity at all. They should be freezing in the dark at night. As far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't be able to run any machines, any mechanisms should be shut down. That's a no-brainer, isn't it? How the hell do you win a war as you allow fuel and food to go into the behind enemy lines? It's absolutely insane. It's contradictory. On the one hand, you're keeping your enemy alive and functioning, and on the other hand, you're saying, "Oh, we have to eliminate Hamas." Well, those two things are inconsistent goals. They are utterly inconsistent goals. You cannot achieve one without effectuating the other in the way they don't want to. So, Trump is trying to, I don't know, Trump will never win a Nobel Peace Prize, but you almost get the impression that, on his way to the Pope's funeral, he's saying, oh, well, we have to be complete altruists. Don't worry, my heart is still in this, in effect, in a Christian altruist, state. And no, that's not how you fight or win wars. But Trump is obviously politically appealing to the world. We've got to be good to think of that. We've got to be good to the Gazans. Well, when was the last time that any of the Gazans were good to Israeli or American interests? No, we don't owe. In fact, what we owe them is complete eradication of Hamas. There's only one way to do that.
Now, the World Food Program has said on Friday that they've run out of food stocks in Gaza. Also commenting, no humanitarian or commercial supplies have entered Gaza for more than 7 weeks, as all main border crossing points remain closed. This is the longest closure the Gaza Strip has ever faced, I don't know how to pronounce that word. Basically, overwhelming already fragile markets and food systems. Program has said, and yeah. Somebody in the chat earlier asked, who's more insane, Trump or the world treating him as a rational person? And yeah, I mean, one of my biggest question when it comes to, because Trump, I think, is probably one of the most divisive figures in political history almost ever. Basically, like it really is, you love him or you hate him, and yeah, I cannot really think. Maybe you can tell me if you can. Well, I'm young. Maybe let's say in my lifetime, and sort of it's becoming hard to really judge somebody like that objectively, because here he said basically he wants to force Israel, and he is forcing Israel to resume humanitarian aid into Gaza. That's a terrible thing that he should be criticized for. But then on the same day, Israeli cabinet basically approved and confirmed that there is no aid going into Gaza anytime soon. So now I have like two different realities. Like either Trump is just making shit up, and I don't know how to even judge that. Like, is it worse to lie about forcing Israel to give humanitarian aid, or is it worse to like him actually forcing Israel to give in humanitarian aid? I'm in this impossible situation, and we'll in a bit we'll talk also about Iran. But you can go into past, all of his bring the hell on Gaza, and it's like people who like Trump will say, well, he just said Israel should like finish something in Gaza, which again is like a fair point, but you cannot like give somebody else or give an ultimatum for somebody else. You cannot say, if you don't do this, this guy will, deal with you, and you don't actually talk to the guy if he will actually deal with him. So,
No, the negotiations
yeah.
with Iran, the negotiations about the Ukraine war. I mean, Trump is really sunk to new lows. You know, I super tempted to. Okay, I'm going to do it anyway. My wife and I had a wonderful day yesterday, spending the day with Leonard Peikoff. And I know I don't want to make this an argument from authority, but Trump did about Mr. Trump, and he brought it up. Leonard brought this all up. It was just the three of us, my wife and Leonard and myself, and he all on his own brought it up and said he's thoroughly soured on Trump, and he wouldn't have written the same way about Trump as he did last year now. So. And it's especially these kind of issues. Yeah, the tariff overkill, but the immoral procedure of negotiating with monsters like Iran or Putin. I mean, the Ukraine issue particularly has him upset. But I have to agree with Leonard. You have to be able to be critical of this guy. What Trump says on one point is purely cosmetic for political purposes and contradicts other things. So how do you got this mental split screen, as you point out, that is a flat contradiction, just a flat contradiction in terms. And there's still weeks of food. There's still weeks of, you even point out there's still fuel there. I mean, it's not as though this is immediate. Well, let's find out what happens and how quickly they capitulate when they have zero food and zero fuel. I mean, that's the only appropriate way to deal with this situation. And negotiating with Iran in this context, someone is killing you. Someone is killing your friends in Israel. Someone's taking hostages through proxies. And he says, oh, well, no, the negotiations are going great with Iran. Super duper. And the moral equivalence on Ukraine is absolutely despicable. The recognition of Crimea, for example, and trying to force Zelensky into that. You can see that Trump does not look at the world through the correct moral lens at all. And it's shockingly disturbing how Trump does not look at the world. It's all politics to him. It's all perception. As I say, he's appealing to some kind of, international altruism on our heartstrings, which is really cruel in the long run, cruel to American and Israeli interests, cruel to the interests of Western civilization, if you ask me. If you want Hamas to be eradicated, which is one thing Trump says, you cannot be good to the Gazans. Being good to the Gazans is inconsistent, logically, factually, inconsistent with defeating and eradicating Hamas. The only way you're going to defeat and eradicate Hamas is by being, what do you say, bad to the, no, being appropriately harsh to the entire population of Gaza. That is the only thing that's going to get this through. And frankly, it's the only thing, in my view, that's inspired Gazans to start complaining as they have in recent weeks. If it hadn't been for the pressure, the military pressure, and the cutting off to the extent but they haven't been cut off. They're not starving yet. Imagine what might happen if they actually were facing starvation, no fuel, and being truly cut off. But, you know, we haven't tried real war yet. How about we try a real war with Gaza and see how long Hamas lasts and see if that does affect the opinions of anybody who lives in Gaza? How about giving that one a shot? After all, this is an ongoing war. How many Israelis have to be killed? How many rockets have to be lobbed? How many missile attacks from Iran have to happen before people get serious and treat this like a real war?
Somebody says I say sort of way too much. I'm trying to basically the reason, and I just said basically, which is also when we do live shows, and I'm trying to control it by sort of by speaking slower. Basically, I'm able to control my speech a bit more when I'm speaking much more slowly. So I'll try to work on that. Going back into Gaza, I think the biggest problem is the bad incentives. Basically, what incentive do Gazans have to stand up to Hamas? They have none. Before the war, they got aid from UNRWA, from all humanitarian organization, from Israel itself. They have aid from everybody. After the war, they have the same kind of aid from everybody again. They have no reason to stand up. And again, if this war ends, it's not like Israel is just gonna like start them for no reason, just because it's fun or anything in that regard. Japanese people were starving at the end of World War II, like actually starving, not the sort of Palestinian starving. And that was one of the reasons why they gave up, is because they no longer could manage the war. And after that, they got access to everything. They were basically rescued. Like the Japanese population was basically rescued, but they were the ones who actually had to say, no, we no longer wish to sort of live that way. And that mental decoupling, that mental abandonment of the old regime is what is needed for Palestinians. If the only thing that happens is that Israel will get rid of Hamas and Palestinians will be like, okay, so we'll just get like a different terrorist group in charge. They don't have this decoupling. Like, yeah, we had a few people standing up, but even then, it's mostly because of the tribal sort of like family culture, family Palestinian culture. It was basically just few of them not really liking the way Hamas is right now, but there is no this like standing up to
No.
Hamas
And
because we
Hamas will
keep
kill
providing
them.
them aid.
And even if you complain to that extent, Hamas will go out, kill you, or disappear you. Come on. That's what it seems to me. No, you have to make it clear that we are morally confident in our side, so morally confident that we have to fight this in a real way. And believe me, you know, if you really do care about peace, if you really do care about the Palestinian people, then the best, you do not help them by sanctioning them in their evil. So long as Hamas is still operative, they have to get the clear message that no, so long as Hamas is operative, you will starve. This is your simple choice. It is, and that requires moral clarity. That requires real moral clarity. When they get that moral clarity that the West has, well, like you say, the world has encouraged this. The world has encouraged this. And insofar as Israel or America will continue to feed them, it will continue to blur the issue, and they will continue to fight on. They will continue to hate Western civilization. They will continue to, in their jihad, to kill as many Jews as they can, until and unless they can see and feel from us the moral clarity that we are right and you cannot continue to do this. We will have, in the words of a late Hamas leader, October 7th after October 7th after October 7th.
And we are getting the same thing from the Western countries. On Wednesday, Germany, France, and Britain called for the end of the, in quotes, intolerable blockade and warned of a, again in quote, an acute risk of starvation, epidemic disease, and death. Israel rejected the statement, saying it's ethically outrageous. And yeah, why is the obligation on Israel to do something when it comes to Palestinians? Even if we go by the international law, Hamas is the governing authority of Gaza. They have an obligation towards their citizens to do something to ensure. I mean, even if we want to talk about the international law, they have an obligation to establish humanitarian corridors. They didn't do that. They have an obligation to not steal the aid. They didn't do that. They have an obligation to like set up things when it comes to distribution of humanitarian aid. They didn't do anything.
They
We
haven't lifted a goddamn finger to do anything in compliance with any of this. They're the ones starving their own people. Let me repeat this. Hamas are the ones, by perpetuating this war and by perpetuating the need for war and by taking over the aid and by distributing it themselves, they are the, but then again, let's back up.
well, they are not distributing. They are
This is their
keeping it.
policy. This is what they want. This is what they've been seeking. They use babies as human shields. They put stuff into schools and hospitals and under UNRWA headquarters. No, no, no. They hold up, they shoot at their enemy and then they hold up their baby in front of them with the hope that Israel will kill them so they can get a negative headline against Israel. No, that's the whole point. We have to be able to say, no, your negative headline is no longer a negative headline and we don't care in any event. You will starve. And they don't know what that means, see, because we keep compromising. We keep doing an A and non-A war. And with so long as that compromise, they can see the contradiction in us. And their official policy is to starve their own people, to create negative propaganda against Israel, to kill their own children, to create negative propaganda against Israel. This is their goal because they are aware of our corrupt morality. And to the extent that there's anything better, confused. I mean, Trump is the one saying, imagine you had Kamala Harris and Biden on the one hand saying, oh, well, they were building a whole pier there to get aid in. To them, it was the most urgent issue of all is to get far more than taking out Hamas. The other side says, so on the other hand, what do we have? We have Trump now who says, yeah, I'll blow Iran to smithereens. They'll be held to pay in Gaza. And now he's the one saying we have to be good to the Gazans. Mr. Trump, that is perpetuating the war. That is playing straight into Hamas's policy. That is giving Hamas exactly what they want. And you are, by saying that, you're clouding the moral issue completely. And that's precisely what Hamas wants, what Hamas is taking advantage of. And Mr. Trump, you are a sucker. You are being played by Hamas. You are being played by the Ayatollah, just as you're being played by Mr. Putin. Mr. Trump, you talk tough and you talk this tough game, but when it comes to the real warmongers, the real monsters, the real enemies of civilization, the real dictators, the real people who start wars, you are totally morally ambiguous. You can't call Putin a dictator. You have the negotiations with Iran are going just swell. No. So long as Trump is going down this path, all he is doing is perpetuating war, perpetuating endless war, and no one, especially the Palestinians, cannot benefit from that. I mean, this is madness, absolute madness. You can't fight a war this way.
Just quickly, because I think somebody had a problem with somebody calling me out for saying like too much or something. I think it's a fair criticism that I'm trying to work on. It doesn't matter that it's my second language. I'm speaking here publicly. I should know how to speak, or I should try to get better, which I am.
I think you do an amazing job in a language not native to you, sir. I'm deeply impressed. And by the way, the comments you make are worth getting through any linguistic difficulties. So focus on what he says, ladies and gentlemen. Focus on what's actually being said by Mr. Krause here, rather than his thick accent or his occasional linguistic lapses, which are insignificant compared to the facts and the moral case that he makes on these issues. So that's my view. Full stop.
Thank you, James. We have a super chat from Gail, super chat from Bonnie, thank you so much, and a super chat from Knows Too Much. He says it's even worse than altruism, immoral hypocrites demanding Israel to resupply its enemies, only apply their standards to Israel, not to themselves. Well, the fact is that on some level, maybe,
Understand what
yeah, I mean,
altruism is. Altruism ultimately amounts to, for those who really know what it means, it's hatred of the good for being the good. It's true evil. It's death worship. It's altruism, as Ayn Rand said, is a morality of cannibals. And so when you say it's worse than altruism, no, altruism is evil. We need to get that clear and consistent in our heads. These people hate life. And in the consistent expression of altruism, these people are outright evil. So when you say worse than altruism, no, altruism is a life hating doctrine of cannibals. And these people hate the good. Those who know better, those who are publicly advocating it, they are haters of life. Now, it may sound like I'm exaggerating, but it's no exaggeration. The more intelligent and the more expressive they are on this, the more they tell me that they hate the good for being the good. They are anti-life. They're death worshippers.
yeah, and as much as oftentimes or sometimes I like to say that I sort of like hypocrisy because when you have a completely corrupt philosophy, the only way to live is hypocrisy, right? If you
Right.
have a completely anti-life philosophy, the only way to actually live is hypocrisy. And when it comes to sort of the way the West has been waging war, I don't think it's that much different from what they are demanding of Israel. I mean, when you look at the Iraqi invasion, what was it about? Winning the hearts and minds. We have to, be careful with the population, and we never knew even what we are doing. We never, I mean, not don't even start about Afghanistan. We had no idea what we are even trying to do, and that same philosophy was basically applied there.
Right. Well, and insofar as it's that, it is a degree of naivete, I will say. Winning the hearts and minds, as if we're nice to these people who are killing us, somehow they'll, oh gosh, they're so nice to us after we've attacked them. We'll change our stripes. We'll turn into something else. No, 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 no. But that's mostly just the facade. That's mostly just the PR. Now, there are some people who are suckered into that degree, but they're deeply confused, morally deeply confused at a minimum, truly evil life haters at a maximum. And that's the range we're talking about here. No, you can't win. No, no, no. I lived through the Iraq War with George W. Bush, and oh no, we can't attack their mosque. We can't blow up their. We knew that they were using their mosques, and they knew that we would be squeamish about attacking their mosques. No, for that very reason, you blow up their mosques. You do not, and by refraining from doing so, you're not going to win over hearts and minds. You're going to tell them that we accept that we're not morally, we don't have the moral confidence in our side until and unless they get it through their thick skull that they will suffer and we will bomb their hospitals and mosques and schools. And that's, you want to know how to win over their hearts and minds? Being morally consistent and in following that up in morally consistent action. That, first of all, it's not even a correct approach to quote winning over hearts and minds. They have to rethink everything. They've got to go rethink their lives and their whole approach. And the only way to do that is by cutting off all food, medicine, and fuel to Gaza right now. And keep it off until they cry uncle.
Somebody in the chat asked, is it more or less respectable to embrace the hypocrisy? So when I said sort of it's necessary, like hypocrisy is necessary for a really corrupt philosophy, I mean, once you understand that, the right thing to do is reject the philosophy, is to reject the standard that requires you to live by hypocrisy. I mean, me and James have talked before one of the shows, we talked about the similarities between J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye and Holden sort of like looking for a different way of life and comparing that to sort of Rourke's. And I think the biggest problem, and I wrote an essay all this, the biggest problem of Holden is he was still trying to hang on to the corrupt morality that he saw that the world had a problem with it, but he never questioned the morality itself. He only questioned people's ability to sort of live by it, which was impossible. That he even recognized. Like he recognized the hypocrisy that is needed for life. He didn't. He never actually challenged sort of the ideal. He never challenged what is the problem with morality.
Yeah, you know, religion has so corrupted the way we think about morality. Religion has got us thinking that morality is a giant sacrifice, it's suffering, it's agony. And so, of course, to be good, we have to take it. You know, we have to kind of take it ourselves on the chin. And morality is inconsistent with life on earth. But when you have this big fat contradiction facing you, you know, about that, it is time to, as Ayn Rand said, check your premises, to rethink your whole moral code, to try and think, well, there's something wrong here because there's this contradiction. And on that point, let me give an ad to the seminars that we do here through Ayn Rand Center UK. We're going to be finishing up, I hope, tomorrow, Leonard Peikoff's course on unity in epistemology and ethics. And the point of tomorrow's discussion, just to make an advertisement here, is exactly that. What about characters like in her novel Atlas Shrugged, Hank Rearden, who are facing a contradiction in the moral code that they've accepted? And they're trying to live, I mean, in certain ways, Hank Rearden was trying to live this contradictory morality. I believe it's wrong on one hand to do this, but everything else, my integrity is telling me to do that. How do you exist in a world where you don't have a clear moral code? And what it amounts to in practice is hypocrisy, a kind of lack of integrity. But to have integrity, which direction do you go in? Is it better to have a hypocritical bad philosophy, or isn't the correct solution to back up and say, no, I need to rethink my moral premises from the ground up. The power of philosophy is the only way, the understanding a correct philosophy for living on earth is the only way to have a moral philosophy that can be lived in practice against all. I mean, religion has had a monopoly on ethics for so long that we can't even imagine. So we have this theory practice dichotomy sort of built into our way of thinking. And that, of course, should signal you, ladies and gentlemen, if your morality hurts that much, you should rethink your morality. As Ayn Rand said, morality shouldn't teach you to suffer and die, but to enjoy life and live. And if you want a morality of life, a morality of human existence on this planet, you need the philosophy of objectivism, the morality that Ayn Rand developed, at least a morality that rejects, my God, that rejects the idea that, well, we have to suffer and sacrifice, we have to feed our enemies, or we're the bad guys. No, 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 no. It is not practical and it is not moral.
Funnily enough, the purpose of morality is to teach you not to suffer and die, but to enjoy yourself and live. It's actually my quote on Steam, where I play all my games. So it is definitely like once you realize the importance of principles, and we talked about that yesterday on the reality show, actually, that once you realize that the purpose of principles, the purpose of like even sort of going less philosophical, the principle of like habits, because you could compare principles to habits, right? You do them because you understand the long-term ramifications, and even in some cases the short-term ramifications of not living by any standard and not living by a good standard that actually is for the long-range life, for actually is getting to what you should want from life. Who says we never talk about objectivism? Some people sometimes say we only talk about Israel and never about objectivism. It's you cannot get this anywhere else.
That is so ridiculous. I mention an objectivist principle in nearly every single episode I do here, and if not to cite an article or Ayn Rand's principles. The only way to understand any of these issues is through philosophy. If you've got a messed up philosophy, you're not even going to understand the correct approach here, ladies and gentlemen. The philosophy for living on earth, there is, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, a morality that doesn't require you to sacrifice, that doesn't pose theory, pit theory versus practice. And was developed in my lifetime by a woman named Ayn Rand. And I would urge everyone to check out her work and that of Leonard Peikoff's. That's what's going to get you the solution, the ideas that will help you understand and live with moral integrity and practical success. It's possible, ladies and gentlemen, but you can see the clash between theory and practice. When you've got President Trump saying, on the one hand, we've got to destroy Hamas, and on the other hand, we've got to be good to the Palestinian people. That is a flat contradiction, and he doesn't see that his premises are mixed up and contradictory. And will, in practice, the one cannot be achieved with the other. I can tell you. It was, as you point out, it's Hamas's job to be good to its own people. And they haven't done it. In fact, quite the opposite. They are using starvation as a political ploy. They're killing their own children as a PR method. That's really their strong suit, and they know that. Their powerful tool is philosophy. I'm going to say that again. The power tool that Hamas has over Israel and the United States is philosophy, playing to our philosophical contradictions.
Yeah, and sort of just to go back a little bit on the international law, I'm not advocating that that's the sort of standard we need to bring up Hamas to. I think international law itself, as I always say, I dislike even the idea of international law, like saying that you should always cite like specific you should try to cite the specific documents, because like what is the point of citing international law where Israel is not even signatory to?
I don't care about international law in this context. International law is an oxymoron. It's a contradiction in terms. There is no way to enforce this, or to the extent that nations try to enforce this, it is a contradictory mess. No, you have to understand, this is again the importance of philosophy. You have to understand the morality of dictatorship, the immorality of dictatorship, the immorality of war. And the only thing to do about war is to stop it as quickly as possible. And that requires as I say, the unconditional unilateral surrender of the enemy. And in order to achieve that as quickly as possible for everybody's sake, is to be morally clear and consistent with that moral clarity in action. No food, no fuel, no medicine until you guys completely surrender and hand over all the hostages and let Israel do as it likes in Gaza. You have to say, we have been so wrong, so messed up, until they reach that mental state. You haven't won the war and cannot win the war. And that's the only moral approach to war.
Yeah, I mean, trying to sort of quote or paraphrase, and I'm not sure if this was Ayn Rand or Leonard Peikoff, but sort of asked if there are any commandments in objectivism. And if there was, the only one could be thou shalt think. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. And in a similar way, in international law, there should be no commandments besides thou shalt defend yourself and end the war as quickly as possible, because no other thing can be enforced.
Well, exactly right. War is the absence of any kind of ability to discuss, persuade, trade, interact. They have destroyed the preconditions of peaceful existence, and you have to respond in kind. No, I'm not saying do the atrocities of October 7th to them, but you have to be complete. You cannot allow your sympathy for in the short run to allow you to forget the long run goal of destroying the entity that caused the war and did the atrocities in the first place. It must be destroyed, and must be destroyed by force. And here, let me cite an article by Ayn Rand, as I think we've cited it many times, in her book, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, The Roots of War. And yeah, the fundamental moral idea of objectivism is think for yourself. In Ayn Rand's term, that's a redundancy. There is no other kind of thinking. You can't let international law, well, you know, the UN said, or the International Court of Justice said. No, ladies and gentlemen, don't turn your mind over to, an authority of that kind. Realize what it really takes to defeat an enemy and to bring about peace. These people are killing themselves. Think of the policy that Hamas is using in killing their own children. They are literally killing themselves in this effort to destroy Israel, ultimately to destroy Western civilization. No, the only way that's going to correct a deeply held and religiously inspired moral view like that is to punish them for having it. You cannot act on it, and you will be faced with overwhelming force and suffering if you do not.
We have a super chat from Bronx Guy Gun Hill Road. Thank you so much. And a super chat, another super chat from Knows Too Much. Thank you so much. He says, mercy and altruism towards evil is immoral, but demanding altruism from Israel, who suffer the results, isn't the same as demanding it from themselves. It's different, but the biggest problem is that the West demands it on itself first. Go see any war the West, either America or sort of any Western or NATO coalition or any Western war that has ever been fought, and it was the exact same thing. Even our help of Ukraine, the fact that we haven't provided them with long-range missiles because they could strike within Russia for so long, is this exact thing. We simply refuse to fight wars because of altruism, because we have no idea of
We'll
sort of the
suffer.
morality
We'll
of
let
war.
our own soldiers die rather than have collateral damage and let the civilian population die. But you see, that is exactly the wrong approach. That is exactly the wrong approach. People say, well, there's this endless war and you're just making more enemies when you fight back against jihadists. No, you're not. The only way that you're going to do that is to actually make them suffer, make them see in practice on their own hides what that kind of force implies and what the other side can do. But it is, of course, and that's what it comes down to. Western nations do not understand this. Western nations deeply need the philosophy of Ayn Rand to understand this. When someone has initiated force against you, there is no other response. You can't be playing to their hearts and minds. You can't be playing with the idea that somehow built into them is a philosophy like we have, a more civilized philosophy. No, they don't have it, and they won't get it that way, and that you're perpetuating it insofar as you pull your punches.
Somebody earlier in the chat was asking about the port explosion that happened in Iran. I was thinking about talking about that today, but the fact is we don't really have any facts. We don't really know what has happened, so we'll give it some time to see what really has happened, and then maybe we can talk about it. There's also been some clashes between Pakistan and India, which I'm not sure where that will go, but yeah. Since both of them have nukes, let's hope that doesn't go much further.
Yes. Now imagine now Iran with or without nukes is a problem, but can you imagine Iran with nukes too, like Pakistan and Israel? I mean, yeah, that enormously complicates the situation. But we have let it get into this situation. Yeah, you have to take out. You have to be able to say we're going to take out the government of Iran. We have to make sure that the Hamas or Hezbollah are utterly eradicated, and there's no temptation on the part of the locals to go back to such a thing. Just as clearly and decisively as we made it clear to the Germans that there's no going back to something like the Nazis, or to the Japanese, there's no going back to this God emperor who starts wars against everybody. No, no, no. You have to make it clear to them there is no going back to anything like that, or you will be taken out.
And with that, thank you everybody for joining us today. As James mentioned, there is the ARCUK study group on Learner Pick of courses tomorrow. That's open to all members, both on YouTube and on the website. The link to become a website member is in the chat, and there should be a join button to become a YouTube member. YouTube membership is cheaper. But you can only watch the recording, while if you are a full member you can also participate, and that's as I said, available to all members, so even at the lowest level, and that's every week on Sunday, on top of the book clubs and many other great things. We're currently going through Atlas Shrugged, so if you haven't read, we're taking a slow, you can catch up, we're taking it really slow. I think our Fountainhead book club took about 2 years or so, so definitely enjoying it as a good
Savoring it.
meal.
Savoring it is the way you should do it. Yes. And when we're done with unity and ethics, in epistemology and ethics, we'll be moving on to Leonard Peikoff's masterwork, his treatise, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand. If you guys want to understand in some depth, with greater clarity, the philosophy of objectivism, that is, you can't miss that. So yeah, do join us on that and become a member, paid member of Ayn Rand Center UK. You're getting an opinion here that you won't find anywhere else. And we're developing a worldwide audience for it. If you think that's valuable, then it's equally valuable to become a member and subscriber and help us keep the lights on around here. Because we're the ones fighting for humanity. We're the ones fighting for peace. We're the ones fighting for a civilized future.
And we'll also be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective. With that, thank you, James, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and bye bye.
Be safe.